The Valorian cruiser hung in the darkness of space like a silver knife, its hull reflecting the distant light of a dying star. Ambassador Threll stood at the observation window, his four eyes blinking slowly as he watched the human fleet emerge from hyperspace. He had lived for 300 cycles, but he had never seen anything quite like this. The humans had arrived with 20 ships against the might of the collective, which numbered in the thousands. It was madness, it was suicide, and yet the humans came anyway. Beside him stood his aide, a young Valorian named Kess, who trembled slightly as the human vessels took formation. The ships were not beautiful like Valorian craft, with their flowing lines and elegant curves. Human ships were blocky, angular things that looked like they had been built for one purpose only. "Ambassador," Kess said, her voice tight with fear, "the humans are hailing us." Threll turned from the window. His diplomatic robes, woven from the finest silks of his homeworld, rustled as he moved toward the communication console. He had been sent here as a neutral observer, nothing more. The Valorian collective had no stake in this war. They were simply here to document, to record, to understand. "Put them through," Threll said. The view screen flickered to life, and Threll found himself looking at a human female. She had dark skin and darker eyes, and her hair was pulled back tightly against her skull. She wore a uniform of deep blue, decorated with medals and insignia that Threll did not recognize. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Coalition," the human said. Her voice was calm, controlled, but Threll could hear something beneath it, something that made his secondary hearts beat faster. "You are the Valorian observers." "I am Ambassador Threll," he replied, inclining his head in the traditional gesture of respect. "We are here at the invitation of the Galactic Council to observe and document this conflict. We mean no harm and take no sides." Admiral Chen studied him for a long moment. Her eyes were flat like stones at the bottom of a deep river. "Then observe," she said. "Document, and when this is over, tell the galaxy what you have seen." The connection ended. Threll stood there for a moment, processing what he had just witnessed. There was no fear in that human's eyes, no doubt, only a cold, terrible certainty that made his scales itch with discomfort. "Ambassador," Kess said, pointing toward the window, "look." Threll turned back to the observation port and watched as the human fleet began to move. They were heading toward the collective armada, which was gathered around the fourth planet of this system. The planet was called Haven by the humans. It had been their largest colony in this sector, home to nearly 2 million souls. The word "had" was important. 3 cycles ago, the collective had reduced Haven to ash. Threll had seen the recordings. Everyone had seen the recordings. The collective had broadcast them across every channel, a warning to any who might oppose them. 2 million humans burned alive in their homes, their schools, their hospitals. The collective had wanted to send a message. They had not expected the humans to send one back. The first human ship engaged the collective vanguard at exactly 1200 hours, Galactic Standard Time. Threll watched as the small human destroyer, no larger than a collective frigate, plunged straight into the heart of the enemy formation. "They are being destroyed," Kess whispered. "Look at them, they cannot possibly survive." She was right. The human destroyer was taking fire from all sides, its shields flaring with each impact. Threll could see sections of the hull peeling away, atmosphere venting into the void. It was a slaughter. And then the human ship exploded. But it was not the explosion of a destroyed vessel. It was something else entirely. The destroyer's core detonated with a force that Threll had never seen before, a wave of energy that expanded outward in all directions. 17 collective ships vanished in that single instant, reduced to atoms by the blast. "What was that?" Kess asked, her voice barely a whisper. Threll did not answer. He could not answer. He was too busy watching as the rest of the human fleet began their attack. The humans did not fight like other species. They did not maintain formation, did not follow the accepted rules of naval engagement. They fought like wild animals, like creatures driven mad by rage and grief. Their ships wove through the collective armada, weapons blazing, taking damage that would have destroyed any other vessel 10 times over. And when a human ship could no longer fight, when its weapons were destroyed and its engines were failing, it did not retreat. It did not surrender. It flew straight at the nearest enemy and detonated its core. "They are killing themselves," Kes said. There was horror in her voice now, horror in something else, something that might have been awe. "They are using their own ships as weapons." Threll watched as another human cruiser, its hull torn open and burning, plowed into a collective command ship. The explosion lit up the darkness of space like a new sun, and when it faded, both vessels were gone. "This is not war," Threll said quietly. "This is vengeance." The battle raged for 6 hours. 6 hours of chaos and destruction, of fire and death. The humans lost 15 of their 20 ships. The collective lost 347. When it was over, the remaining human vessels gathered around the ruins of what had once been Haven. They did not pursue the fleeing collective ships. They did not attempt to press their advantage. They simply stopped, hanging in the void like silent sentinels, keeping watch over the grave of 2 million souls. Threll stood at the window for a long time, watching them. His aide had retreated to her quarters, unable to process what she had witnessed. But Threll could not look away. He could not stop thinking about what he had seen. The humans had come here to die. They had known, from the moment they entered this system, that most of them would not leave it, and they had come anyway. They had thrown themselves at an enemy that outnumbered them 100 to 1, not because they thought they could win, but because they refused to let the deaths of their people go unavenged. "Ambassador," the voice came from the communication console, startling Threll from his thoughts. "Incoming transmission from the lead human vessel." Threll moved to the console and activated it. Once again, Admiral Chen appeared on the screen. Her uniform was torn now, stained with blood and something darker. There was a cut above her left eye and her face was pale with exhaustion. But her eyes were the same, still flat, still hard, still burning with that terrible certainty. "Ambassador Threll," she said, "I trust you have observed." "I have," Threll replied. His voice was hoarse. He did not know when he had last spoken. "I have seen much today, Admiral Chen." "Then you understand," she said. "You understand what we are capable of." Threll nodded slowly. "I understand that you are willing to die, that you will sacrifice everything for vengeance." For the first time, something shifted in Admiral Chen's expression. Her lips curved upward, but it was not a smile. It was something else entirely, something that made Threll's blood run cold. "No, Ambassador," she said. "You do not understand, not yet. This was not vengeance. This was merely a message." A message to the collective, to the galaxy, to anyone who might think that humanity is weak, that we can be broken, that we can be made to kneel. Admiral Chen leaned forward and her voice dropped to something barely above a whisper. "We lost 2 million people on Haven. Men, women, children, families, communities, futures. The collective thought they could make us afraid. They thought they could make us submit." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was like iron. "They were wrong. This fleet was our opening statement. There are more ships coming, Ambassador. Many more. And we will not stop until the collective understands the price of what they have done. We will not stop until every world they hold trembles at the sound of human engines. We will not stop until the galaxy knows that humanity does not forgive. Humanity does not forget." She leaned back, and her eyes never left Threll's. "So observe, Ambassador, document, and tell your council what you have seen today. Tell them that this war is just beginning, and tell them that if they stand with the collective, they will share the collective's fate." The transmission ended. Threll stood alone in the darkness of his ship, surrounded by the distant light of stars that suddenly seemed very cold. He thought about what he had witnessed today. He thought about the humans and their terrible, beautiful madness. And for the first time in his 300 cycles of life, Ambassador Threll of the Valorian Collective was truly afraid. 3 weeks passed. 3 weeks of silence from the human fleet, which had withdrawn to the edge of the system to repair and regroup. 3 weeks of frantic communications between the Valorian Collective and the Galactic Council. 3 weeks of debate and discussion and fear. Threll had sent his report. He had described everything he had seen, every detail of the battle, every word that Admiral Chen had spoken. The Council had read it with growing alarm. The other member species had begun to take notice. And then the reinforcements arrived. Threll was asleep in his quarters when Kess woke him with urgent news. He dressed quickly and hurried to the observation deck, and when he arrived, he stopped in his tracks, unable to believe what his 4 eyes were showing him. The human fleet had grown. 15 ships had become 50. And behind those 50, emerging from hyperspace in a continuous stream, were hundreds more. "How is this possible?" Kess asked. Her voice was trembling. "Where did they all come from?" Threll did not answer. He was too busy counting 200 ships, 300, 400. The flow showed no sign of stopping. "They said there were more coming," Threll murmured. "I did not believe it. I did not think it was possible." By the time the last human ship arrived, the fleet numbered 817 vessels. It was the largest human armada ever assembled, larger than anyone had thought possible for a species that had only achieved interstellar travel a mere century ago. And they were not alone. Trailing behind the human fleet, flying in formation with their blocky, angular ships, were vessels of another design entirely. Sleek, predatory craft with wings like knives and hulls that seemed to drink in the light. Threll recognized them immediately. "The Keth," he breathed. "The humans have allied with the Keth." The Keth were warriors. Everyone knew this. They were a species built for combat, evolved on a world of constant conflict and danger. For generations they had remained isolated, refusing all attempts at diplomacy and alliance. They fought alone, trusted no one, respected only strength. And now they were flying alongside the humans. "Ambassador," Kess said, her voice barely audible, "what does this mean?" Threll watched as the combined human-Keth fleet began to move toward collective space. "It means," he said slowly, "that the galaxy is about to change." The transmission came 3 hours later. This time, it was not Admiral Chen who appeared on the screen, but a human male. He was older than the Admiral, with gray hair and deep lines carved into his face. His uniform bore the insignia of the highest rank in the human military structure. "I am Fleet Admiral Marcus Webb," the human said, "Commander of the United Earth Defense Force. You are the Valorian observers." "I am Ambassador Threll," Threll replied. "I have been documenting this conflict for the Galactic Council." Admiral Webb nodded. His expression was grave, but there was something else in his eyes, something that looked almost like satisfaction. "Good," he said. "Then you can document what comes next. We are entering collective space. Our objective is the collective homeworld of Vashti Prime. We intend to end this war." Threll felt his heart skip. "Admiral Webb, the collective has a fleet of over 5,000 ships defending Vashti Prime. Even with your reinforcements, you are outnumbered 6-1. "I am aware of the numbers, Ambassador." "Then how do you expect to win?" Admiral Webb smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "Ambassador Threll, do you know why the Keth agreed to fight alongside us?" Threll shook his head. "Because they recognize something in us that they had never seen in another species. The Keth respect only strength, not the strength of numbers, not the strength of technology, but the strength of will, the strength of spirit." Webb leaned forward. "They watched what we did at Haven. They saw our ships flying into certain death rather than retreat. They saw our people sacrifice themselves for vengeance, and they understood." "Understood what?" Threll asked. that humanity will never surrender, that we will fight until the last ship is destroyed, the last soldier falls, the last human draws their final breath, that we will burn the galaxy to ash before we let our enemies win. Webb's voice was soft, but it carried the weight of absolute conviction. The Keth respected that. They saw in us the same fire that burns in their own hearts, and they decided that if humanity was going to fight, they wanted to fight alongside us. Threll was silent for a long moment. He thought about what he had seen at Haven. He thought about the human ships, burning and broken, still flying toward their enemies with their cores primed to detonate. "You are going to win this war," he said. It was not a question. Webb nodded. "We are going to end this war, Ambassador, one way or another. The question is how many have to die before it is over." He paused. "That is why I am contacting you. The Council has influence. They could pressure the Collective to negotiate, to surrender." "The Collective will never surrender," Threll said. "They have too much pride." "Then the Collective will burn," Webb replied simply. "And when the ashes cool, we will build something new, something better." He gestured at the fleet behind him. "We have 800 ships, Ambassador. The Keth have brought 300 more. And this is just the beginning. More allies are coming. Species who saw what happened at Haven and decided they would rather stand with humanity than against us." "Who?" Threll demanded. "Who else is joining you?" Webb smiled again. "You will see, Ambassador. Soon enough you will see." The fleet moved into collective space the next day. Threll followed at a safe distance, his cruiser tagged as a neutral observer. He watched as the human Keth armada swept through system after system, destroying collective outposts and military installations with ruthless efficiency. But they did not attack civilian targets. They did not bomb cities or massacre populations. They struck only at military objectives, only at those who could fight back. It was a strange kind of mercy, and it puzzled Threll until he understood. The humans were not like the Collective. They did not want to rule through fear. They did not want to break the spirits of their enemies. They wanted only one thing: justice. And they would have it no matter the cost. The battle for the collective border world of Carthos VII lasted 16 hours. It was a grinding, brutal affair, with both sides taking heavy casualties. The collective fought with desperate ferocity, knowing that if they lost here, the path to their homeworld would be open. They lost anyway. Threll watched from his ship as the last collective destroyer was torn apart by human missiles. He watched as the human Marines began their planetary assault, dropping from the sky in armored pods that punched through the atmosphere like meteors. He watched as the collective ground forces were systematically neutralized, their defenses crumbling under the relentless human advance. And then he watched as something unexpected happened. The human soldiers began evacuating the collective civilians. "I do not understand," Kess said. She was standing beside Threll, her eyes wide with confusion. "They are saving them. Why are they saving them?" Threll watched as human medics tended to wounded collective soldiers. He watched as human engineers repaired damaged infrastructure, restored power to cities that had been dark for days. He watched as human officers organized the distribution of food and water to the displaced population. "Because they are not monsters," Threll said quietly. "They are not the collective. They do not wage war on the innocent." "But the collective killed 2 million humans, women and children, bobbies." "Yes," Threll said, "and the humans want justice for that crime. But justice, Ambassador, is not the same as revenge." Kess turned to look at him, her 4 eyes blinking slowly. "Is it not?" Threll thought about that question for a long time. He thought about the human ships at Haven, sacrificing themselves to avenge their dead. He thought about Admiral Chen's cold, hard eyes. He thought about Admiral Webb's soft voice and absolute conviction. "No," he said finally, "I do not believe it is. Revenge is blind. It destroys everything in its path, friend and foe alike. Justice is precise. It targets only those who are guilty, only those who must answer for their crimes." He gestured at the scene below, where human soldiers were sharing their rations with collective children. The humans want the leaders of the collective to pay for what they did. They want the military that carried out the attack to answer for their crimes. But they do not blame the common people. They do not hold children responsible for the sins of their rulers. That is wise, Kes said. It is more than wise, Threll replied. It is what separates civilization from barbarism. The next transmission came that evening. It was Admiral Chen this time, her image flickering on the view screen. She looked tired, but there was something new in her eyes, something that looked almost like hope. Ambassador Threll, she said, I wanted to inform you that we have received communications from several collective worlds. Civilian leaders are asking to negotiate. They want to surrender. Threll felt his heart's lift. That is excellent news, Admiral. It would be, Chen said, if the collective high command had not rejected their requests. The leaders on Vashti Prime have forbidden any surrender. They have ordered their people to fight to the death. The hope faded as quickly as it had come. Then the war will continue. Yes, Chen said, but not for much longer. We are 3 days from Vashti Prime. The final battle will be soon. She paused. I wanted to ask you something, Ambassador. Ask. When this is over, regardless of how it ends, will you speak for us? Will you tell the Council what you have seen? Threll considered the question. I have already sent my reports. The Council knows everything that has happened. Reports are one thing, Chen said. Personal testimony is another. When this war ends, there will be those who try to paint humanity as monsters, who try to use our actions to justify their own aggression. I want you to tell them the truth. I want you to tell them who we really are. And who are you, Admiral Chen? Chen smiled. It was a small smile, tired and sad but genuine. We are humans, Ambassador. We are capable of terrible things, yes. We can be cruel and violent and destructive, but we are also capable of mercy, of compassion, of love. Her smile faded. The collective tried to break us. They thought that by killing our people they could make us afraid. They were wrong. They only made us stronger. They only made us more determined. She leaned forward. We fight because we have to. Because if we do not stand up to evil, it will consume us. But we do not enjoy it. We do not revel in destruction. We just want to protect the people we love. Threll was silent for a moment. Then he inclined his head in the traditional gesture of respect. I will speak for you, Admiral Chen. I will tell the Council what I have seen, and I will make them understand. Chen nodded. Thank you, Ambassador, for everything. The transmission ended. Threll stood alone in the darkness of his ship, watching the distant stars. 3 days, in 3 days the war would end, one way or another. He hoped the humans would find what they were looking for. He hoped they would find peace. But deep in his heart, he knew that some wounds never truly healed. Some scars lasted forever. He could only hope that humanity would find a way to live with theirs. The skis above Vashti Prime burned. Threll watched from the observation deck of his cruiser, which had taken a position far from the battlefield but close enough to observe. The Valorian vessel's sensors recorded everything, every explosion, every destroyed ship, every moment of the most devastating battle in galactic history. The collective had gathered their full strength for this final defense. 5,200 ships formed a wall of metal and fire around their homeworld, their weapons systems fully charged, their shields at maximum power. They had prepared for this moment for weeks, fortifying their defenses, mining the approach vectors, positioning their forces with mathematical precision. It was not enough. The human fleet had grown again in the 3 days of travel. Word had spread across the galaxy of what was happening, and species that had long cowered under collective aggression had found their courage. The Mortai sent 40 ships. The Jessic contributed 60. Even the isolationist Rune, who had not engaged in interstellar conflict in 1,000 years, dispatched a dozen ancient warships to join the human cause. But it was not the numbers that made the difference. It was something else. Something that Threll saw in the way the human ships moved, the way they fought, the way they refused to break even when faced with impossible odds. It was the fire in their hearts. The battle began at dawn, Vashti prime time. The human fleet advanced in a wedge formation, with the heaviest ships at the point and the Allied vessels providing support on the flanks. Admiral Webb commanded from the flagship, the massive dreadnought named Remembrance, a ship that had been constructed in the orbital shipyards of Earth specifically for this day. The collective met them with everything they had. Missiles streaked across the void, lasers carved burning paths through the darkness, plasma cannons roared with terrible fury. Ships died by the dozens in those first few minutes, torn apart by the sheer volume of fire. But the humans kept coming. Threll watched as a human carrier, its flight deck shattered and burning, launched its remaining fighters before it exploded. He watched as those fighters, tiny specks against the vastness of space, dove into the heart of the collective formation, their pilots knowing they would never return. He watched as human boarding pods latched onto enemy cruisers, disgorging Marines who fought hand to hand through the corridors, dying by the score but taking 10 times their number with them. "They are winning," Kess whispered beside him. There was awe in her voice, pure, unfiltered awe. "Ambassador, they are actually winning." Threll did not answer. He was too busy watching the impossible unfold before his eyes. The collective formation was breaking. Ships that had stood firm for hours were beginning to retreat, pulling back toward the planet in desperate defensive patterns. The coordinated fire that had initially threatened to overwhelm the human advance was becoming scattered, disorganized. Fear was spreading through the collective fleet like a virus. And the humans could smell it. Admiral Webb's voice came over the open communication channels, broadcast to every ship in the system. "This is the moment, people. This is what we came here for. Push forward. Give them nothing. Take everything." The human fleet surged. Ships that had been holding back now threw themselves into the fray, their weapons blazing. The Keth warriors howled their battle cries as they tore through the collective ranks. The allied species fought with newfound courage, inspired by the humans who led them. And slowly, inevitably, the collective began to fall. It took 8 more hours, 8 hours of constant combat, of death and destruction on a scale that defied comprehension. The humans lost 300 ships that day. The collective lost 4,000. When it was over, when the last collective warship had been destroyed or captured or fled into the depths of space, the human fleet took position around Vashti Prime. Their weapons were trained on the planet below, on the gleaming cities and towering spires of the collective homeworld. Threll held his breath. This was the moment. This was when the humans would show who they truly were. Would they take revenge for Haven? Would they burn Vashti Prime to ash as the collective had burned their colony? The communication channels crackled to life. Admiral Webb's voice, tired but steady, filled the void. "Attention Vashti Prime. This is Fleet Admiral Marcus Webb of the United Earth Defense Force. Your military has been defeated. Your fleet is destroyed. You have lost this war." A pause. "We are not here to destroy you. We are not here to murder your civilians, your children, your elderly. We are not the collective." Another pause, longer this time. "We are here for justice. We want the leaders who ordered the attack on Haven. We want the commanders who carried it out. We want those responsible for the deaths of 2 million innocent human beings to answer for their crimes." Webb's voice hardened. "Surrender them to us and this war ends today. Your people will be spared. Your cities will stand. You will have the chance to rebuild, to become something better than what you were." "But if you refuse," Webb continued, and now his voice was like ice, "if you protect the guilty, if you choose to shelter those who committed genocide against our people, then we will have no choice. We will land on your world. We will hunt down every last one of them, and anyone who stands in our way will share their fate." A third pause. "You have 1 hour to decide. Choose wisely." The transmission ended. Threll realized he had been holding his breath. He released it slowly, his heart's pounding in his chest. Beside him, Kess was trembling. "Will they surrender?" she asked. "Will they give up their leaders?" "I do not know," Threll admitted. "The collective has never surrendered before. Their leaders have always believed themselves above consequences. But if they refuse, then the humans will do exactly what Admiral Webb said. They will land troops on Vashti Prime. They will hunt down the guilty, and innocent people will die in the crossfire." The hour passed in silence. Threll watched the human fleet hanging motionless above the collective homeworld, their weapons powered but not yet fired. He watched the planet below, its cities dark and quiet, its people waiting to learn their fate. And then, as the final minutes ticked away, a transmission came from the surface. The collective high command had surrendered. The leaders who had ordered the attack on Haven, the commanders who had carried it out, the officials who had authorized the genocide of 2 million human beings, they were all being arrested by their own people. They would be handed over to human custody, to face trial for their crimes. The war was over. Threll felt something he had not felt in a very long time. It took him a moment to recognize it. Hope. The aftermath was chaos. Good chaos, mostly. The kind that came when people realized they had survived something terrible and were still alive to see the sunrise. But chaos nonetheless. The humans landed peacefully on Vashti Prime, their marines acting as peacekeepers rather than conquerors. They distributed food and medical supplies to the civilian population. They helped restore order in cities that had descended into panic. They treated the collective citizens not as enemies, but as people who had been misled by corrupt leaders. And throughout it all, they maintained their discipline. There were no reprisals, no revenge killings, no atrocities committed in the name of justice. The humans kept their word. Threll observed it all, recorded it all, sent report after report to the Galactic Council. He told them about the battle, about the surrender, about the way the humans had handled their victory. He told them that humanity was not the monster the collective had tried to make them. He told them the truth. 3 days after the battle, Threll received a summons to the Remembrance. Admiral Webb wanted to speak with him personally. He docked his shuttle in the human dreadnought's cavernous hangar and was escorted through corridors that still bore the scars of combat. Bulkheads were scorched, deck plates were dented, the air smelled of smoke and recycled atmosphere. But the crew members he passed were not demoralized. They were proud. They had done what they came to do. Admiral Webb was waiting for him in a conference room near the bridge. The old human looked exhausted, his gray hair disheveled, his uniform wrinkled, but his eyes were clear. "Ambassador Threll," he said, rising to shake hands in the human fashion. "Thank you for coming." "Thank you for inviting me, Admiral." Threll took a seat across from the human. "May I ask why I am here?" Webb smiled wearily. "I wanted to thank you. Your reports to the Council helped turn opinion in our favor. Several species that were considering supporting the collective changed their minds after reading what you wrote." "I simply told the truth." "Yes," Webb agreed, "you did, and in war the truth is often the rarest commodity of all." He leaned back in his chair. "I also wanted to explain something to you, something that I think is important for the Council to understand." "I am listening." Webb was quiet for a moment, gathering his thoughts. Then he spoke. "When the collective attacked Haven, they thought they were sending a message. They thought they could frighten us into submission, make us too afraid to fight back. They did not understand humanity at all." He shook his head slowly. "We are not a species that responds well to threats. When someone tries to bully us, to intimidate us, to make us afraid, something inside us rebels. We get angry. We get stubborn. We refuse to back down." "I have seen this," Threll said. "At the Battle of Haven, your ships sacrificing themselves." "Yes, that is who we are. We would rather die on our feet than live on our knees." Webb's voice was soft, almost gentle. But that is not all we are, Ambassador. We are also capable of forgiveness, of mercy, of moving forward instead of being trapped in the past. He gestured toward the window, toward the collective homeworld below. We could have destroyed Vashti Prime. We had the power. We had the justification. 2 million of our people murdered in cold blood. No one would have blamed us for taking revenge. His eyes met Threll's. But revenge solves nothing. It only creates more pain, more suffering, more hatred. The cycle never ends. So you chose justice instead, Threll said. We chose to be better than our enemies, Webb corrected. We chose to show the galaxy that humanity is not a species to be feared, but a species to be respected. We fight when we must, but we do not fight to destroy. We fight to protect, to defend, to make things right. He leaned forward. That is the message I want you to carry to the Council, Ambassador. That is what I want the galaxy to understand. Humanity is not looking for empire. We do not want to conquer, to dominate, to rule. We just want to live in peace with our neighbors, to explore, to grow, to build a future where all species can thrive. He paused. But if anyone threatens that future, if anyone attacks our people, if anyone tries to break us through fear and violence, then they will learn the same lesson the collective learned. Humanity will not surrender. Humanity will not submit. And humanity will have justice, no matter the cost. Threll was silent for a long moment, processing everything the Admiral had said. Then he inclined his head in the traditional gesture of deep respect. I understand, Admiral Webb, and I will ensure the Council understands as well. The peace negotiations began 1 week later. They were held aboard a neutral space station, a massive orbital platform that had been constructed by the Galactic Council specifically for this purpose. Representatives from every major species in the galaxy had gathered to witness the end of the war and the beginning of a new era. Threll was there as the official Valorian observer, but his role had changed. He was no longer just documenting events. He had become an advocate, a voice for humanity in the halls of galactic power. The Council had read his reports. They had seen the footage of the battles, the aftermath, the way humanity had handled its victory, and they were impressed. More than impressed, they were afraid. Not of what humanity might do, but of what humanity had shown itself capable of. The species that had emerged from obscurity barely a century ago had just defeated the most powerful military force in the galaxy. They had done it with fewer ships, fewer resources, fewer soldiers. They had done it through sheer force of will. And now they wanted peace. The Federation diplomats arrived on the third day of negotiations. They were representatives of the collective government, the interim leaders who had taken power after the old high command had been arrested. They were nervous, uncertain, clearly out of their depth in a situation that had no precedent in their history. The lead diplomat was a collective elder named Vorn. He was old, even by collective standards, his scales dulled with age and his movements slow and careful. But his eyes were sharp, and when he looked at the human delegation, Threll could see something unexpected in his gaze. Respect. The negotiations were long and difficult. There were disputes about reparations, about border adjustments, about the fate of the captured leaders. The humans were patient but firm, refusing to compromise on matters of principle while showing flexibility on details. And through it all, Threll watched and listened and learned. He learned that humanity was not a single voice but a chorus, a species of individuals who disagreed on almost everything but found ways to work together anyway. He learned that they argued and debated and sometimes shouted at each other, but when faced with a common threat, they put aside their differences and stood united. He learned that they were passionate and emotional, quick to anger but also quick to forgive. He learned that they loved fiercely and grieved deeply, that they formed bonds with each other that transcended logic and reason. He learned that they were, in their own way, beautiful. On the final day of negotiations, When the peace treaty was ready to be signed, Vorn asked to speak privately with Admiral Webb. Threll was allowed to observe, at the request of both parties. The three of them sat in a small conference room, far from the crowds and cameras. Vorn studied the human across from him for a long moment before speaking. "Admiral Webb," he said, "I must confess something to you." "Go ahead." "When this war began, when we ordered the attack on Haven, I opposed it. I argued that it was wrong, that it would only lead to disaster, but I was overruled." Vorn's voice was heavy with regret. "I should have fought harder. I should have done more." Webb nodded slowly. "You are not responsible for the crimes of your leaders, Elder Vorn." "Perhaps not, but I am responsible for what happens next. I am responsible for rebuilding my civilization, for creating something better from the ashes of the old." Vorn leaned forward. "And I wanted you to know that I understand now. I understand what humanity truly is." "And what is that?" Vorn was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke, choosing his words carefully. "You are survivors, Admiral. Your species has faced extinction more times than you can count. Plagues, wars, natural disasters, you have survived them all. You have learned to adapt, to endure, to never give up no matter how hopeless things seem." He paused. "When we attacked Haven, we thought we were breaking you. We thought we were showing you that resistance was futile, but we only made you stronger. We only reminded you of what you truly are." Webb said nothing, he simply listened. "The collective has existed for 10,000 years, Vorn continued. "In all that time, we have never faced a species like yours. We have conquered worlds, subjugated civilizations, built an empire that spans a quarter of the galaxy. And yet, in less than a century, you have done what no other species has ever done. You have defeated us." He shook his head slowly. "Not just militarily. You have defeated our ideology. You have shown us that fear and domination are not the only ways to build a civilization. You have shown us that mercy can be stronger than cruelty, that justice can be more powerful than revenge." Vorn reached into his robes and withdrew a small object. It was a pendant, carved from the shell of a creature native to the collective homeworld. It was old, very old, and inscribed with symbols that Threll did not recognize. "This belonged to my grandfather," Vorn said. "He gave it to me when I was young, and he told me that someday I would know when to pass it on, that I would recognize the one who deserved to carry it." He held the pendant out to Webb. "It is a symbol of respect, Admiral, of honor, of recognition between equals." Webb hesitated. Then slowly he reached out and took the pendant. "Thank you, Elder Vorn." "No, Admiral, thank you for showing us what we could become." Vorn rose to his feet. "The treaty will be signed today. The war is over, but the work is just beginning." He looked at Webb with those sharp, ancient eyes. "I hope that humanity will help us rebuild. I hope that we can learn from you as you have learned from us." "We would be honored," Webb said. And Threll, watching from the corner of the room, felt something warm bloom in his chest. It was hope, he realized. Hope for the future. Hope that perhaps, despite all the darkness and destruction, something good could still emerge. The treaty was signed that afternoon. The war officially ended, and the galaxy entered a new age. Threll returned to his homeworld a hero. His reports had helped shape galactic opinion, had contributed to the peaceful resolution of the conflict. The Valorian Council honored him with their highest award for diplomatic service. But Threll did not feel like a hero. He felt like a witness, a chronicler of something much larger than himself. In the years that followed, humanity continued to grow. They formed alliances with species across the galaxy, sharing their technology and their culture and their unique perspective on existence. They explored new regions of space, established new colonies, built new civilizations. And they never forgot Haven. A memorial was constructed on the ruins of the colony, a massive structure of crystal and light that could be seen from orbit. Every year, on the anniversary of the attack, humans from across the galaxy returned to pay their respects, to remember the dead, to honor their sacrifice. Threll attended one of those ceremonies, 20 years after the war. He stood among the crowds of humans and aliens, watching as Admiral Chen, now old and gray, laid a wreath at the base of the memorial. "We remember," she said, her voice carried by speakers to every corner of the site. "We remember those who were lost. We remember why we fight. We remember what we are fighting for." She turned to face the crowd. "And we remember that even in our darkest hour, when everything seemed lost, we found the strength to rise, to fight back, to survive." Threll felt tears forming in his secondary eyes. He did not wipe them away. "Humanity has come a long way since that day," Chen continued. "We have grown stronger, wiser, more united than ever before, but we must never forget where we came from. We must never forget the price of freedom. We must never forget that peace is not something that is given. It is something that is earned, something that must be protected, something that is worth dying for." She paused, her eyes sweeping across the gathered masses. "So today we remember. Tomorrow we continue the work of building a better future. And always, always, we honor those who came before us, who gave everything so that we could be here today." She stepped back from the podium. The crowd was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, a sound began to rise from the gathered humans. It was a song, an ancient melody that spoke of loss and hope and the unbreakable spirit of humanity. Threll did not know the words, but he felt their meaning in his heart. He felt the love and the grief and the determination that filled the air. He felt connected to something larger than himself, larger than any single species or civilization. He felt like he was part of a family. When the ceremony ended, Threll made his way through the crowd toward Admiral Chen. She saw him approaching and smiled, the same tired, sad, genuine smile he remembered from all those years ago. "Ambassador Threll," she said, "it has been a long time." "Too long, Admiral Chen." He inclined his head in the traditional gesture of respect. "I wanted to thank you for everything you have done." "I did what I had to do," she said, "what any human would do." "Perhaps," Threll said, "but you did it with grace, with mercy, with wisdom." He paused. "The galaxy is a better place because of humanity, because of people like you." Chen's smile widened just a little. "That is the nicest thing anyone has ever said to me, Ambassador." "It is only the truth." They stood together in silence for a moment, watching the memorial, the crowds, the stars above. "What will you do now?" Threll asked finally. "Retire, I think," Chen said. "I have earned a rest. There are new generations coming up, young people who will carry the torch forward. My time is passing." She looked at him. "What about you, Ambassador?" Threll considered the question. He was old now, even by Valorian standards. His scales were dulled with age, his movements slow and careful. But his minds were still sharp, and his heart still beat with purpose. "I think I will write a book," he said. "A history of this era, of the war and the peace that followed, of humanity and its place in the galaxy." He paused. "I want future generations to understand what happened here. I want them to know the truth." Chen nodded. "That sounds like important work." "It is the only work that matters," Threll said. "Preserving the truth, ensuring that the lessons of the past are not forgotten." They stood together for a while longer, two old warriors from different species, united by shared experience and mutual respect. Around them, the crowds began to disperse, humans and aliens returning to their lives, their homes, their futures. The memorial stood silent and eternal, a testament to those who had fallen and those who had risen in their name. And above them all, the stars shone on, bright and beautiful and full of promise. The galaxy had changed, humanity had changed it. And Threll knew, deep in his heart, that this was only the beginning.